What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. And one that's been coming up in the comments. I actually plan on going over this one because I went over their last one in a collection update. Today, we are going over the latest offering from Dawn of Solace, Affliction Vortex. This also comes out on the 14th of February on Noble Demon Records. This band formed in 2005 in Finland. This is their fourth album overall. I got into them again with their last album, Flames of Perdition, which I thought was a solid slab of melodic, gothic, deathdoom, maybe just doom. I don't know, it kind of fits in a lot of different categories, but baseline, it's definitely doom for sure. In the studio, this is a two-man project featuring one Tuomas Sakonen, sorry if I got your name wrong, famously of bands like Wolfheart and Before the Dawn. He does all of the music on here and all the harsh vocals. This also features clean vocalist Mikko Kolia. I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to pronounce that. Also, my handwriting was pretty poor on that one too, so yeah, kind of double screwed myself. Anyway, I pretty much woke up and looked at the weather outside and was like, you know what? It's a perfect day for a really gloomy, gray, drab sort of album that just kind of captures the mood. It's snow and ice and it's kind of melting, so it's all drippy and wet and shitty outside. I actually drove through some of this weather last night coming home from Lakewood, Ohio for a really awesome show with Decapitated and Incantation, and I didn't know it was going to warm up the next day, and yeah, now it's just like muddy and stupid outside. But again, perfect for this kind of album because this is drab, gloomy, melancholic as hell. It thrives on the woeful melodies that you would associate with bands like Catatonia, Paradise Lost. I would even throw in like Octobertide and Ghost Brigade for good measure. It pretty much feels like a soundtrack to seasonal depression, but that's a compliment for this style of, again, like melodic death doom. I think that's kind of where I'm at with this band because, again, you do have like harsh, heavier spots on here, but a lot of this is really driven by clean vocals and just the gloomiest of melodies, whether they are like a little bit more on the heavy side or they're like clean playing. It is pretty much the uniform vibe on this entire album. First off, I think the production here is wonderful. It's very rich sounding, but it also still sounds very organic. The vocals don't have like a lot of processing on them. The clean vocals in particular, I really enjoy them. The fact that Mikko has a very distinct accent adds a lot of flavor to, the lyrics themselves and just how he pronounces things. And his delivery is kind of similar to Jonas Rensk. It's kind of in that sort of like breathy sort of, like depressive fluttering that's just kind of his thing. But it's counteracted by Tuomas's like big growls and occasional more blackened screams. And not only do they do like a switch back and forth between like, a cleaner verse and then like a heavier like pre-chorus or bridge, they also blend them quite often. In fact, there's a lot of choruses on here where you hear layered vocals of both like, harmonized cleans and then like a low growl underneath. The first two actual tracks, because I'm not going to count the intro because there is an intro on here, Inception, which is appropriately gothic, a little industrial-ish. It probably has the most different synths on the entire album, at least in terms of what I heard, because you get a little bit more like, again, like kind of like dark wave, industrial sort of synths in the background. But when you get down to Murder and Fortress, this is like pretty much the core of their sound. Now, granted, both songs are different. Murder is more slow and lumbering and definitely like a moody, melancholic piece driven by some absolutely amazing melodies. You get some good melancholic crooning building into a giant chorus. There's some really interesting synths in the background. And even on that chorus, you get some layered growls and cleans too. It pretty much trudges through the murk and mire and delivers a really solid hook. And then Fortress is a little bit more up-tempo and a little bit heavier overall. You still have a lot of cleaner passages on there. There's some really nice syncopated rhythms on there. But there's like some flat out heavier sections where they just isolate the growls and then go into a cleaner chorus. And for the most part, the growls are in a lower register. Like, if you've listened to Wolfheart or Before the Dawn, Tuomas's delivery is generally very powerful. It's a giant roar, but there's some moments on here where he kind of gets like a little bit more of a blackened tinge to him. Into the Light and the absolutely amazing song Perennial, there's a little bit more of a scream to him. He sounds notably more sinister, and Perennial probably represents one of like the biggest mood shifts on this album. This is probably one of the heavier tracks overall. I wouldn't call a lot of this like particularly aggressive. Like it kind of hangs out on that melancholic, woe is me, woe is everything around me sort of gear. You do have sections where it is notably more heavy, but that generally gives way to a big chorus hook or a lavish bridge or, something to kind of bring the melody back. Perennial in particular just feels more dark and brooding. Like you listen to that riff versus a lot of the riffs in this album, it just feels different. It has like this darker tinge to it and kind of almost like a Jerry Cantrell-esque sort of like melancholic but heavy kind of gloomy riff. Like it's kind of halfway between a metal riff and a flat out rock riff. Like you could throw a little like kind of bluesy tag at the end of it and it would be very, very much in the vein of like Alice in Chains. Even the clean vocals on that song in particular just feel a little bit more haunting, a little bit more spooky. And then the heavier sections with the harsh vocals, they're a little bit more prominent. In fact, man, this song delivers some just absolutely beefy riffs. It's gloomy but aggressive, and that's a vibe that isn't always captured on here. Again, this is very melody driven. Like I could definitely draw a lot of comparisons to like Peaceful Deathdoom, but I would say it's not necessarily the earlier stuff. It's more of the stuff where all of those bands, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, etc., really start discovering more melody and injecting more melody in their sound. But riff-wise, it's not entirely that because I still feel like this draws a lot of influence from melodic death metal. In fact, there's a lot of stuff on here that kind of reminds me more of the like gloomier side of a band like Dark Tranquillity, especially with the presence of the synths. Though the synths are not overpowering, they're really not in the front at all. They're more of a background texture to kind of add just like a little bit more atmosphere to the songs. But the give and take between the harsh and the clean vocals and just the overall like gray, drab mood on here, it feels more like gloomy mellow death in a lot of these spots. The musicianship on here is solid, though I know that Thomas is like one hell of a musician. I own a fair amount of Wolfheart albums. That dude is pretty remarkable on just guitar alone, but I think he's also playing drums in here, which this doesn't sound like programmed drums. It could be, but they sound very natural. And the drum work on here, well, initially I kind of thought it was like, all right, he's just kind of like staying in the pocket, not doing anything that's kind of like, going off the rails or not trying to get like too progressive or anything. But there are sections in here where the drum work is notably more aggressive. They get some like heavy double time grooves and even some more like, death metal flourishes in terms of like the rhythms. Not talking like blast beats or anything like that, but it is notably more aggressive in sections. But the riff work and just the guitar work in general in here, I think is really solid. It's more about capturing the mood, delivering solid melodic hooks. And I don't think Thomas did the leads on here. I think that was handled by a session player who I didn't write down, but his name was probably super Finnish, and I probably would have fucked it up anyway. But the leads on here are very emotive, lots of feel to them. You get some like occasional shreddy moments, but a lot of this just kind of stays in that gloom of depression where this album lurks. Dream I thought was a pretty big standout too, as that one is a little bit more clean. You get a straightforward like 4/4 time rock beat, and it's a little bit more up-tempo. And up-tempo is not really a thing that shows up much on here, but it kind of has like a goth rock sort of vibe to it, like a little bit of Sisters of Mercy. You get these really clean, haunting tones, and it curtails kind of abruptly into like a big rockin' chorus, which I thought that transition kind of happened a little too soon. Like there really wasn't much of a build into it. Like it's just all of a sudden we're rocking, here's the big chorus. It's a little bit more aggro, it slows it down, but it does have a good hook in it. But the bridge on there, I think, showcases some really cool songwriting. They use this repeated melody kind of drop out and kind of like muffle the production a little bit. It gets into this like, very melancholic strummy melody, and then builds into what I thought was going to be like the last chorus. They were just going to do like the big key change to make it sound even more grand, but no, it's like this grand crescendo. Like it's not even like the chorus, but it's a big like just closing melody. I was like, wow, that's absolutely awesome. And at points I was really looking for like some breaks in the songwriting, because a lot of this, I will say, does get a bit formulaic. Mother Earth in particular though was a big standout for me, not only because it's the longest track, but I think that additional space in the song to build up. Like the first 2 minutes is all instrumental. It features some absolutely gorgeous guitar harmonies. And this one, I would say, probably captures that melodic death doom sound the most. You get a good give and take between the harsh and clean vocals on here. And there's just something more about like the dynamic shifts in the song and the fact that there's just a little bit more space to do them. Because a lot of these songs aren't really super long. Like most of them kind of hang out around like the 4 minute to like 4 minute and 45 second range. I think there's a couple of shorter ones on there and then the big long closer. So a good chunk of this feels condensed. And with this style, generally I don't mind longer songs because I feel like you have more time to build the mood, the atmosphere, build on the riffs and melodies, and then have some fun with some of the transitions. Because while I can say that this album definitely embodies, this very melancholic sound, like they do it really well, I do feel like it gets a little stagnant at points. And in terms of like songwriting dynamics, they repeat a lot of them. You frequently get the harsh and clean layered vocals on the choruses. You also frequently get like a big clean dropout when it gets down to the verses, and then big heavy pre-chorus or chorus. It really does follow a formula for a good chunk of this, to the point where the songs kind of like start lacking distinction. So it became kind of hard to pick out songs for like, distinct moments. Like Invitation, about the only thing I thought was really different about that one was the fact that there are like more tribal drums in that. But outside of that, it kind of follows the same formula as a lot of these songs, which is a solid formula. It works, it delivers hooks, but I liked hearing songs that didn't sound like they were on a beeline for the big hooky chorus. I wanted to hear something that was just like a little bit different, like take me on a sad adventure, because that's what this band does, but yeah, kind of get like a little bit creative with it. I'll also say that some of these songs do end a little abruptly. Again, that sort of like condensed sort of vibe on here. Some of the songs just kind of stop, like Murder. While I think it's an absolutely killer song, I feel like the end, it kind of just drops out. And I definitely felt that there was room to kind of like build on that song, or at least give it like, a bigger ending. Like maybe even do like a big crescendo or a chorus refrain at the end, or, a long fade out on a particular bridge. It just kind of quits. The same thing with Perennial. I think it's a solid song, but the end of it, I feel like, they painted themselves into a corner, and it kind of just ends on this broken down riff pattern with like these accented drums, and it's really not much of like, a big headbanging groove or anything like that. It just kind of ends. But overall, I did think this was a pretty good album. It's that sad boy, melancholic, death doom, gothic doom, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a hybrid, all those things. I love that stuff. And today the weather was fucking perfect for it. So I don't know if that'll affect my score any, but I don't know. It just felt kind of fitting today. But overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it for the most part. The melodies are rich. They're, again, woefully melancholic. All of this is very depressive, but it's also very tuneful and hooky. The choruses on here, I think, are really solid. I did like the songs that kind of broke out of the mold a little bit more, though. In fact, I would say that Mother Earth is more of like the template of the kind of sound that I was really kind of hoping I would get out of here. It's just a bigger song with more lavish movements, and it still has big vocal hooks. It still has the heavy, more sinister sections on it. All that is still on here, though. It's just more condensed in these songs. The production's excellent. The atmosphere is pretty much perfect. If you're a big fan, again, of bands like Catatonia, Paradise Lost, Dark Tranquility when they're a little bit more brooding, anything like remotely similar to that, pretty sure you're going to dig this. I recommend checking it out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only stream, which we're going to try to do more monthly. And in terms of what we're going to talk about, who knows? We might pick a subject. We might just ask questions of one another. They're generally pretty fun. And again, don't feel as though you can't ask any question you want, because it doesn't matter how weird they get. We'll likely answer them. But memberships are the new way to support the channel more directly. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And of course, somewhere down here is a join button for the memberships if you would like to join. And of course, thank you guys so much for all the likes, all the comments, all the support, all the subscriptions, literally everything. It means the world to us. It's been an amazing run these 6 years now. God, it's crazy. And we still have a ton of content coming your way. More discussions, more collection updates, because yeah, I'm not going to stop collecting. More States of Metal. I have some other ideas for segments too. And maybe even some collaborations in the future. Who knows? Either way, just want to thank you one more time, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.